Hey guys, let me make a tutorial on how to create your own custom entities and add them into your game if you're on Minecraft Bedrock Edition or Pocket Edition, however you guys like to call it. In this tutorial, I'll be using a program called Bridge, so it does work on a mobile device or on a computer. It doesn't really matter what type of device you're using, this will work for any device. And I will also show you how you can add a custom animations to your entities, and all this is very simple to do. Let me show you how it's done. The first thing you want to do is you want to create a model for your entity. You could do this while using a program called BlockBench. If you don't know how to download and use BlockBench, I already made a video about this. I'll leave a link for that in the description. And this will work on a mobile device or if you're using a computer. It doesn't matter what device you're using. But something I didn't mention in that video is that wherever you place your mob's head, you want to make sure that the folder that it's in, it's called head. The game will use this for when the mob is looking around or when it's looking at you or another player. But the game needs to know where the head is located, so it's gonna look for this one called head. So make sure you rename it like that. And then to export your model, it's very simple. You want to go up here where it says file, and then go here where it says export, and then click here where it says export Bedrock geometry. Make sure you pick this one or it will not work. So all you do is click on it, and if you're in a computer, it's gonna show up this window, and here you just select which folder you want to save it to. I'm just gonna save it to my desktop. And if you're on a mobile device, it will just download automatically. And then you also want to do the same thing for the texture. So here I have this texture, and to save it, if you're on a mobile device, you just hold it. And if you're on a computer, you just right click on it. And then you want to click here where it says save as, and then just select whatever folder you want to save your texture to. I'm just going to save it to my desktop too. And if you're on a mobile device, this will also just download it instantly. And the next step will be in Bridge. And once you have Bridge open, the next thing you want to do is just open up whatever project you want to add your entity to. But whatever project you're going to add your entity to, it has to have a behavior pack and a resource pack. And if you guys don't know how to download and use Bridge, I'll leave a link to a video that I already made, so I won't be explaining too much. If you guys are having problems using Bridge, you guys can watch the video I made about this. And here I'm going to create a new project. So I'm just going to go here and then click here where it says new project. And like I said, whatever project you're going to add this to, make sure it has a behavior pack and a resource pack. So these two, this one has it activated, and I'm also going to select this. So it registers these two together. Another thing that I'm going to recommend is that you go here where it says experimental gameplay and activate this one that says holiday creator features and the wild update. This is optional, but sometimes some of the options might not show up if you don't activate these two. And you could also activate the rest of these if you want, but like I said, but that's up to you. And then here you just want to give your project a name, a description, and then just fill in the rest. So once you finish filling all that up, you just want to click here where it says create. And this will create a new project for you. It's going to create a behavior pack. So if I'm mentioning the behavior pack, I'm referring to this one, the one in red. And it also created some of the folders and the files that you're going to need. And it also created a resource pack, which is this blue one here. And it also created some of the folders and the files and some of the files that you're going to need. And to add your entity into your project, it's very simple. You just go here where you see these three dots, and then you click here where it says new file. And then this window is going to pop up, and if you don't see any of these options here, you could just click on this, and this will show the rest of the options. This is just in case it's not showing any of these. And to add your entity, you just want to go here where it says entity. And here you get a few different templates that you can use to create your entity. So if you want it to behave similar to a bat or a bee or a cow or any other mob in the game, you can just click any of them. But the one I'm going to be using is this one that says blank entity. It's not going to have any behaviors, but I'll show you guys how to add them. Here you get a few different options. The first one is so you can select your texture for your entity. So if I click here, it's going to pop up this window, and then here you could just look for whatever texture I'm going to use for my entity. So in the first step in the BlockBench, I saved my texture to my desktop, so it's here. So I'm just going to click on this one and click open, and this added the texture here. And if you're on a mobile device, it will be the same thing again. It's just going to ask you to look through your folders and look for your textures. So most of the time it's just saved in your downloads folder. And then in the second option is so you could select whatever model you're going to use for your entity. So I'm just going to click on this one. And same thing again. In the first step, I saved mine to my desktop. So here I'm just going to look for the 3D model I made for my entity, which is this one. So I'm just going to select it. This added the geometry to my entity. And it will be the same thing if you're on a mobile device. Just look through your folders and look for wherever you saved it. For the third step, this one's optional. This is if you want to add a custom image for your spawn egg. But if you do want to add a custom image, just make sure the image is in a PNG format. And you also want to make sure you don't make your image too big. The maximum size I would make my image would be 64 by 64 pixels. I wouldn't make one bigger than that. And for the fourth step, you just want to give your entity an identifier. You can use whatever you want as an identifier. So here I'm just going to call it example. But you could call this whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. But something important is that here you don't want to use any capital letters. So if you use if you use an uppercase letter, it's going to give you an error. Same thing if you use a space. What I would recommend doing is instead of using a space, if you want to add space in between, just use an underscore and then type in whatever you want after that. But I'm just going to leave mine like this. And then here, down here, you could give your entity a display name. That's the name that's going to display in game. And here you could call it whatever you want. I'm just going to call it example. And here you are able to use capital letters, or you could also use spaces if you want. But I'm just going to leave it like this, and then you just want to hit create. And once that finished, that created all the files and folders that your mob requires. If you wanted to, you could already import this into your game, and you could already summon in your entity. Let me show you how that would look. So once I'm in the game, this is the spawn egg that it created automatically for me. And if I summon in the entity, this is how it will look right now. But right now, it's not going to move or do anything since it doesn't have any behaviors. And I'll show you how to add them right now. And also, if I hit it, it doesn't have any gravity, so it just goes flying off. But let me show you how you can add your own custom components to it. So if I go back to Bridge, here in the behavior packs, inside of this entities folder, I created a new file for the behaviors for my mob. I called it example. So if I just click on this one, it will be this file. This is what controls how my entity behaves inside of the game. And if I go into the resource packs and go into this folder, this is entity. It also created this file. If I go inside of this file, this is what controls what materials my mob is going to use, what textures, the geometry, and a few other things. And inside of this folder where it says models, this is where I saved my geometry. So if I go here, models, then entity, this is the 3D model that I added to my entity. I also added some render controllers, and inside of the textures folder, then if I go into entity, this is the texture for my mob. So if you guys wanted to edit any of this is where you could find it. And now let me show you how you can add your own components to your entities. So if I go back into my behavior pack, and then I open up this file inside of my entities folder. Once this file is open, if I go here where it says Minecraft entity, if I go here, you can find the description, component groups, components, and events. If I select this one that says description, here's where you can find the identifier for your entity. So the identifier for the mob that I created is this. It also has a component that says is spawnable. What this one does is it tells the game whether or not you can spawn this mob with a spawn egg. You can either set it to true or false. Right now it's set to true, so I am able to spawn it with a spawn egg. And you can change this to false, and this will make it so it cannot be spawned with a spawn egg. Another option that you get here inside of the description is this one that says is summonable. And if you don't know what any of this does, what you could do is you could right click on it or just select it. And this menu is going to pop up, and you click here where it says view documentation. And this will show another window, and here's the component that I selected. So it will be this one here. So here you get the name, and then it gives you a description. Here in the description, it says that this one is used to tell the game whether or not I could spawn this mob using a command like the summon command. It also tells me what type of values I could give, so I could set this to true or false. So if you guys don't know what any of this does, you could just view the documentation. And if I close this, you also have the component groups, components, and events. And this one, the one that says component, this is the one that tells your entity how it's going to behave. So how much health it has, how much strength, the speed, if it can move, and a bunch of other things. So to add a new component, you can just click here where it says components, and then you go down here where it says add. And here you get a big list of all the components that you could add. And there is way too many components for me to explain what each one of these does. So what I would recommend doing is going to this website. And this is the website, which is bedrock.dev. I'll leave a link to this in the description. And here you can find all the information about creating add-ons. So it has all the information about blocks, entities, biomes, or anything else that you want to learn about. So if I go, since I'm making an entity, I'm going to go here where it says entities. And if I go up here and click this, here I can see the components. So if I click on this one, it shows me a list of all the components that I could add to my entities. And most of these will have a name that kind of explains what they do. But if you don't know what any of them do, what you could do is just click on it. So if I click on this one that says Minecraft loot, here it gives me the name of the component, and then it gives me a description. So what this one does, it just sets a loot table for the entity. So it drops items when it dies. It also shows me what type of values I could give them. So I would recommend just reading through this so you know what type of components you could add to them. So here where it says components, you could just add whatever components you want, and anything that's any of the components that are here inside of this one that says components, these components are always active. And then if you go here where it says component groups, here you can make different groups so you could add or remove them depending on what you want. Just an example, if you create an entity that has different components, you can have different components when it's a baby, and then have different components once it becomes an adult. And I'll show you an example of this right now. And you could also add events. The events are used to add or remove component groups. And I'll also show you an example of that right now. So if I go into my entities folder, here I save the behavior packs for the pig. So if I open up this file, this is the behavior pack for the pig. So if I go here versus entity, it also has a description. So here I could see the identifier, which is Minecraft pig. And then if I go here versus components, here you can see all the components that the pig has. So here it has a component for the health. It just tells the game how much health it has. It also has a component that makes it nameable, so you can change its name. It also has a component that allows it to be leashed, and it has a lot of other components. Like I said, to explain what each one of these does, it will take a very long time. So if you don't know what any of these do, click on them and then just click here as view documentation and then just see what it does. And if I go into its component groups, here it has a component group for when it's a baby. So if I open this one up, these are the components that it has while it's a baby. So first it has this component that it just tells the game that this is a baby. It also has a component that changes its scale, so the size. So here it has a value of 0.5. If this was an adult, this would just be a 1. It also has this component called ageable. This just tells the game how long it's going to take for this entity to grow up. So here it says the duration is going to be 1,200 seconds. It also has a list of items that you can feed it to make it grow faster, which would be carrot, beetroot, and potato. And here, if you wanted to, you could add more items. So if I went here, I could also add I could add a diamond. So now I could feed it an item to make it grow up faster, but I'm just going to remove that. And then here it also has this one called grow up. So once the mob grows up, it's gonna activate an event. So here it just says event, and then this is the name of the event that's going to get activated once it grows up. This one's called ageable grow up. So if I close this and go into the event, this is the one that's going to activate once it grows up. So if I open this one, the first thing that this event does is that it removes, and then it removes a component group. And the component group that it's going to remove is the one called pig baby, since it's not going to be a baby anymore. After it removes this component group, then it's going to add, and then it's also going to add a component group, and it's going to add this component group, which is pig adult, and then it's also going to add this one, which is pig unsaddled. So if I go back into the component groups, like I said, the first thing it's going to do is remove this one that says pig baby. So it's going to remove all these components, and then it's going to add this one, which is pig adult, and it's going to add this one, which is going to make it so the pig now has XP. That's why when you kill a baby, it doesn't drop any XP because it didn't have any experience. It also adds this one, which is Minecraft loot. So it adds a loot table to the adult pig, and then it adds a component that makes it so you can breed it. Here it gives you the option if it requires a tame. So if it has to be tamed, right now it's set to false. It also allows you to specify with what entities it could breed with. And the breed items, these are the items that it could breed with. So whenever you give it any of these, it's going to start breeding. So what I would also recommend doing is downloading the official vanilla behavior pack, and then here you can find all the entities. So if you want to make your entity similar to any of the official entities, you can just open up the file inside of Bridge and look through it and see what components they use for that entity. So here I'm just going to drop this one in here. And then you could open the file, or you could just save it into your project. And once you have it open, you could go into its components, see how this mob works. And another thing that you could do is you could select any of the components and you could copy them and then paste them into your own entity. Also leave the link where you could download the official behavior pack. And like I said, there's too many different components that you could add to your entity for me to be able to explain them all. But I'm just going to show you some of the basic ones that you could add to your entity so it can move around. So if you go into your entity that you created and then go into its components, the first one that I would recommend that you add is Minecraft health. So you can just look for health. And here I'm just going to select this one. And this one is so you can say how much health your entity has. So if I click down here again, and here where it says value, this how much, here you can set a value for the health. So every 2 points is 1 heart. So if I set this to 20, this will have 20 hearts, but you could set this to whatever you want. Then you could also add a max health. Here I'm just going to set it to the same thing again, just 20. And you could also add a minimum health, but I would not recommend that you add this, because if you add a minimum, just an example, if I made it so the minimum health that this one can have is 2. So if I set this one to 2, this will mean that the minimum health that this one can have is 2. This will mean that it will never die because it can never go below 2. So I would recommend deleting this unless you want your mob to be invulnerable. And if I go back here where it says components, another one that I would recommend adding is physics. Just look for it like this, Minecraft physics. And just by adding this one, your entity would have gravity. So now it wouldn't be floating away. But here you also get a few different options. You could also tell it if it's gonna have collision. You can set this to true or false. I'm gonna set mine to true, but you choose whatever you want. It also has the option to add gravity. So here I could also set it to true or false. So if you wanted to have gravity, set it to true. If you don't want it to have gravity, set this to false. I'm going to set it to true, but you choose whatever you want for your mob. And then I'm going to go back here again where it says components and then add another component. And this one is going to be called, I'm going to add this one is called jump static. This would just make it so your entity is able to jump. And to make it so your mob walks around, you're going to have to add a few different components. So I'm going to go here where it says components and add this one. First one that I'm going to add is this one that's called behavior random stroll. You can look for it like this. This will just make it so your entity just walks around randomly. You also want to add this one, movement basic. This one just makes it so your mob can turn. And the next one that I'm going to add is Minecraft navigation walk. If you select this one and then you go here where it says add, here you can add a few different things. So you can make it so you can tell if it's amphibious, or you can make it so it can avoid portals or avoid the sun or avoid water or a bunch of other things that you can select here. And you guys can look through all of these and see what they do. But the ones I'm going to be adding is this one that says can sync. You can set this one to true or false. If you set it to true, it will sync. If you set it to false, this means your mob will not sync and it will just keep floating. So I'm going to set mine to false, but you could change it to however you want. I'm also going to add this one that says can swim, so it's able to swim. And you can set it true or false. I'm going to set it to true. If you don't know what any of these are doing, just select it and then view documentation. And here you'll find all the information about what each one of these do. And the last component that I'm going to be adding is movement. So it's just called Minecraft movement. This one sets what speed your mob is going to walk. So here you just select it and then click value. And here you can add whatever value you want, but I'm going to set mine to 0.25. You can set this to whatever you want. Just make sure it's not too high or it's going to be way too fast, or not too low or it's going to be too slow. You can just adjust this to whatever speed you want. And that's pretty much all you have to do. Then you can just save it. If you're on a computer, you could press Control S, or you could also go up here where it says File and then Save File. And you can keep adding however many components you want. It's up to you. But to add this to your game, it's very simple. You just go here where these three dots are at. And then you want to click here where it says Export as MC addon. And just click on that. Once that finishes, you just want to click this and this will save your add-on automatically. And if you're on a mobile device, this will probably be saved into your downloads folder. And in this video, I will not be showing you how to install it since there's already a lot of videos that show you how to do that. But let me show you how you can activate this into your world. So once you're in game and you already installed the add-on, you just want to go here where it says play. And then you just want to select whatever world you want to add your add-on to, or you could just create a new world. But if you're adding it to a world that already exists, you just want to go here into your world settings. Then go to your behavior packs. Here it says my packs, just look for your add-on and activate it. This is the one I just created right now, so I'm just going to click activate. And then you also want to do the same thing for the resource pack. Most of the time it will activate it automatically, but if it doesn't, just look for it and make sure you activate it and then just start your world. Once you're inside your game, there's a few ways that you can summon your mob. You can just go into the creative inventory and then go to your spawn eggs. And then here, just look for your mob that you just created. That's the one I just created. Or another thing that you could do is you could use a summon command. So you could do summon and then the name of your entity. So here, just type in your entity's identifier minus my name, and then I called it example. So if I activate this command, it summons in the mob. And like I said, you could also use the spawn egg, and this mob will now be walking around, but it doesn't have any animations yet because I haven't added them to them. And I will do that in the next video, or else this video is going to be way too long. But if you guys have any other questions or anything you guys want me to show you, just let me know.